Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Chalk Talk. I'm Matt Morris, joined as always by Scott Procter and Lucas Semb, and we're doing a full playoff episode this week. The NFL playoffs are in full swing, and we are at the divisional round. We're going to preview the matchups and give you a little bit of what we think is going to happen. So we're going to start in the NFC up at the frozen tundra, where the Rams are going to be heading into Lambeau to take on the number one seeded Green Bay Packers in a battle that pitches one of the best defenses in the league with the Rams against one of the best offenses in the league with the Packers. So going into it, Scott, do you think that the Rams defense is going to be strong enough to stop Aaron Rodgers and that dynamic Packers offense?
Yeah, so the Green Bay Packers are my preseason pick to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl, and I think they took a huge step in that direction by locking up the number one seed and having the NFC playoffs go through frigid Lambeau Field. This will pay immediate dividends as a West Coast Los Angeles team has to travel halfway across the country to win its second consecutive playoff game. I made the point last week of how unique the pair of Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey is, and we saw over the weekend how they could render a once explosive Seahawks offense basically inept. You know, Jalen Ramsey had DK on clamps for the third time this season, and Aaron Donald had Russell Wilson running for his life once again. But the Rams are able to do that against a division foe who they're ultra familiar with. That isn't going to be the case here for the Packers. And as great as Pete Carroll is, he's not the offensive mind that Matt LaFleur is, even as young in his career as he is. Green Bay's offensive line and running game is much better than Seattle's, even with the loss of David Bakhtiari, and that'll allow LaFleur to call a balanced game and allow Rodgers to shine late off play-action pass. The remaining four NFC quarterbacks are Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Jared Goff. Sorry. One of them is not like the other. One of them is not like the other. I think the Rams will keep this close through halftime, but the better quarterback and team pulls away in the second half. I like Green Bay winning 27-13, a little score prediction for you guys. What do you think about that, Luke?
I'm kind of on the same page with you. I think the Rams defense is going to challenge the Packers, but their offense is just way too elite to be overwhelmed. Their lowest scoring output this year was in Tampa, and they just didn't bring in a very uncharacteristic showing where they lost 38-10. Other than that, their lowest scoring output this year is 22 points, and that's still 3 touchdowns. They lead the NFL on offense at 31.8 points per game this year. I just think that's too much for a couple of elite guys to shut down an entire offense. One main matchup, obviously, is going to be Jalen Ramsey versus Davante Adams. I think Ramsey will slow him down. But like Matt said, he said midseason, Davante Adams is the best wide receiver in the league, and I think he hit it on the head. I mean, foot for foot, no one is staying with Davante Adams. I think Davante Adams is going to win that matchup. He won't have a typical Davante Adams stat line, but he's going to find the end zone. And Aaron Donald versus the Packers offensive line is another huge matchup, but I believe that the Packers O-line will hold their own. Corey Linsley is all pro. Elgton Jenkins is at an impressive sophomore season. Billy Turner has even kind of revitalized himself this year. And I just think that, no matter where Donald lines up, they're going to make it tough on him. I think that Rodgers handles pass rush pressure better than anybody else too. And, I just got the Packers winning this one. Pretty similar comparison to yours. I'll say 24-14 Packers.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to sound like we're all saying the same thing here because I got the Packers winning too. I think one thing that'll be very interesting, as I said in the opening, this is the frozen tundra. This is Green Bay in the middle of January. It's going to be a high of 28, a low of 16, and this is a team coming from LA, and these guys, whether you want to admit to it or not, that weather really affects players right from the get-go. And then I think this is more about what the Packers are going to do besides Davante Adams, and I think it's going to come down to Aaron Jones. I think obviously Davante Adams is having an elite season, but Aaron Jones is also playing great once again and showing why he's a star in this league. I mean, he's got over 1,100 rushing yards on just 201 attempts. He's averaging 5.5 yards per carry with 9 TDs. Not to mention he's dynamic in the passing game as well. But the Packers are going to want to establish that run game because it keeps that amazing pass defense of the Rams at bay. And then not only that, but Rodgers this year, it has 138.1 passer rating and 21 touchdowns and 0 interceptions off play action. If they establish that run early, they make it so that the Rams have to play them honest and up front, and you can't really send the blitz in after Rodgers, who this year has struggled a little bit when he has had pressure in the back. But if you set up that run and then do play action, it's going to be hard for the Rams to stop that Packers offense. And then like everybody said, Scott, you mentioned Jared Goff is not like the others, and not just that, he's coming off, a surgery with his thumb. He's going to be playing in the frigid weather, which he has historically not played well in to begin with. I think that the Packers match up very well on defense with the Rams' offensive weapons, and I just don't think Goff is enough at the end of the day to outscore Aaron Rodgers in that and that Packers offense. And that's been the issue this entire year with this Rams team, is that the offense does not score enough to really help the defense, who holds teams to basically 20 points or less every single game.
Yeah, and to be clear, I called that man Jared Goof on purpose because that's really what he is, especially in big games. I know he's been to the Super Bowl, but since then we haven't seen much. And with 9 functioning fingers fully, I don't know if I like him in the frozen tundra, this weekend. And as I mentioned, the play action pass, and as you alluded to, also Matt, Aaron Jones has to be a bell cow running back this weekend, or if not, there has to be a running back by committee, including Jamal Williams. In the rookie from Boston College. This has to be a ground game that gives you at least 25 attempts. If you put everything on Aaron Rodgers, as great as he is, you put everything on Aaron Rodgers this weekend against a Rams defense that, as currently constructed, it's going to be a longer day for Green Bay fans than they probably expect. So that balance is going to be super important, and Aaron Jones has to be a factor this weekend.
Here's my thing. Let me get in here real quick, Matt. Just last year, the Rams offense was elite. So Goff can lead a good offense. I don't know what the difference has been between, they still got McVay calling plays. They still got their same weapons on the outside, and they got a great trio of running backs. So I don't really know where the difference has been, but it doesn't seem like Goff, like you had mentioned, is the guy who can really do it anymore this year. But I know that he has it in him, which is something that, is interesting to look at this week.
I think the biggest difference between Goff's success, especially in that Super Bowl year between now, is similar to the Packers with that running game. Who you have in the backfield? They had Todd Gurley, who was in his prime and made things a ton easier on that offensive line, and Jared Goff to utilize play action pass. And the Rams, they had Cam Akers, who's a good looking running back, Darrell Henderson as well. And they're really doing the running back by committee. But when you don't really have that bell cow running back who you can rely on, who defenses have to respect, it's going to compromise some other parts of your offense. And we're seeing that right now with Jared Goff here this season.
Absolutely. And, as we finish up and wrap up talking about the Packers-Rams, we're going to transition to the AFC. And we have a matchup of two quarterbacks that have finally proved that they can win a game in the postseason. Ravens-Bills, Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen. And the Bills open at home in Buffalo as only 2.5-point favorites, basically meaning that Vegas thinks this is a pick'em. It could go either way. After watching what the Bills did against the Colts and after watching what the Ravens were able to do against Tennessee, do you guys think that the Bills should be heavier favorites, or do you think that this is, as close as it's going to be and Vegas is correct with how they're setting this up?
Hell no, they shouldn't. Hell no, they shouldn't be heavier favorites. Sorry about that, Luke. I got to get in here. Hell no, they shouldn't be heavier favorites. The only reason they are really is because they're at home. I spoke glowingly of Josh Allen last week, as much as it paid me to do so. Talk about his Pro Bowl season that he's put on display this season, and, said he'd earn his first playoff win on Saturday, which, he obviously did. He played well enough to beat 39-year-old Phillip Rivers by 3 points. But I caught a glimpse of the Josh Allen that I know and have come to love. Less than 4 minutes left. Up 3 points, 1st and 10 at the Colts' 35-yard line. Not only does he take a sack and loses about 20 yards, but he does the one thing you can't do in that moment. He fumbles the ball trying to be prime Big Ben in the pocket, shrug off defensive lineman, and nearly cost Buffalo the game. Thankfully, one of their offensive linemen recovered, but if that fumble allowed Rivers the amount to come back with about 3 minutes left, again, only up 3 points or down 3 points if you're Phillip Rivers, we'd be having a much different conversation this morning. But he blew a 16-point halftime lead last season in the playoffs to Houston. He almost blew a 14-point fourth-quarter lead this year to Indianapolis, but that didn't happen. But what did happen is Indianapolis dominated time possession by 12 minutes, outgained Buffalo by nearly 100 yards, and picked up 27 first down to Buffalo's 22. Now, I look at Baltimore on the other side of things, and I see a team who's finally figured it out, its identity at the right time. I voiced my concern on this show in the past for Lamar's ability to consistently throw the ball down the field, but last weekend showed that Lamar and the Ravens can beat good teams and win playoff games by playing to their strengths. Lamar has at least 80 rushing yards in 5 of his last 6 games, and Buffalo is middle of the pack against the run. I believe they rank 17th. They're behind some teams like the Falcons, Jets, and 49ers in terms of yards on the ground given up a game. Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines combined for 153 yards last week, 5.5 yards a carry between the two of them. Baltimore's defense is healthy at the right time, and they have stars at all 3 levels. Just this defensive front, now that they're healthy, Calais Campbell, Pernell McPhee, Derek Wolfe, Matthew Judon, these guys can crowd the pocket and ruin the quarterback's day. We saw Marcus Peters come up with the game-saving interception at the end of last week there, and I think he kind of provides that perfect matchup for Stephon Diggs. And Stephon Diggs, I want to talk about him real quick. He deserves a ton of credit and praise for the development of Josh Allen. You want to know how you go from throwing more interceptions and touchdowns your rookie year to being about a below average to average starter your second year to being a fringe MVP candidate your third year? Look right there at Stephon Diggs. But, back to the Ravens, the league messed up. They let Lamar Jackson get his first career playoff win. And, now that monkey and pressure is off of his back, I think the sky's the limit. He's going to make it 2 in a row this week. And I know you agree with me, Luke.
Yeah, I'm not used to this. Me and you are collaborating kind of all our takes here. I don't think the Bills should be any heavier favorites, and here's why. This matchup is blaringly similar to the Ravens matchup with the Titans last week. The Ravens are the Ravens. They will find a way to score. The Titans put together a nice game plan to thwart the pass, and Jackson gave it to him on the ground instead. And they have a high-octane offense. They're hard to stop. The Bills are a very similar team to the Titans. Both are high-scoring offenses, but both have porous defenses. The Titans allowed 27 points per game to opponents this year. The Bills 23. The Titans allowed 380 yards a game. The Bills 350. Neither of these are good to slow down Action Jackson, and neither is good enough to compare to the Ravens' great defense, like you had just mentioned.
Great defense.
Right. The Bills this past week played a significantly worse Colts offense and allowed 472 yards. Unless they make some unprecedented changes this week in practice, the formula to beat the Ravens is not there. They're lucky to be favored at all. I think this should be an even line. I'm taking the Ravens.
See, I'm going to disagree. I'm going to take the Bills, first off, and I think at least a touchdown at home for these Buffalo Bills who just won their division and are playing hot. You talked about, Scott, you talked about the Ravens finally finding their identity. The Bills have had their identity. They have been dynamic on offense, and I think going up against one of the best defenses in the league.
What is that? What is that identity exactly?
It is a spread out offense using both the run game and effective wide receivers on the outside. Stephon Diggs is great. Davis is awesome. Devin Singletary has been huge for them out of the backfield. And you know what? They opened up nother.
No. Singletary has barely been used this year.
And Zach Moss is unlikely to play this week, and they're running game.
Zach Moss is out.
And when he does play, he's a goal line option. He's a goal line option. You're not going to get much more out of him
if the Bills' offensitive identity is having Josh Allen drop back and throw the ball 45 times again, I'm taking that as the Raven defense.
That's not their identity. They opened up a whole nother option in their offense, and they started using Allen once again as a runner, and he made Indianapolis be honest. He rushed for 50 yards on just 11 attempts. They were not prepared for that. And if you allow Allen to help with the run game, which is what it seems like the Bills are going to do now, Dable is going to keep being creative and get guys open. And you have to respect, as you said, Stephon Diggs. And if Diggs is going off, you're going to have to send more help his way. And it's just going to become an issue in that sense. And I admit, the Bills' defense has not been great overall, but that secondary is still elite. Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White are awesome secondary options. They're going to cover Marquise Brown. And not only that, Tremaine Edmonds as a linebacker calling the shots and being the lead linebacker, this Bills defense has not been great, but they're fast. And I think that if you're focused completely on containing Lamar Jackson, and that's what you sell your entire team on, I think the Bills defense can get that done. And it's more on the Ravens to, this has been the question. Like you said, they have been struggling to find their identity, and the Ravens need to figure out what happens when Lamar Jackson cannot do what Lamar Jackson does. And every time that question has had to be answered, they end up with a loss. And that's how they lost last year to Tennessee in the playoffs to begin with. If you can create a situation where the Ravens can't be, Lamar Jackson is the lead rusher, and you have to force him to throw a little bit, with this Bills offense being a team that scores a lot, if they go down a bit and they're down, a touchdown, 10 points, you're going to make Lamar Jackson pass the ball. And that is when the issues are going to come up. And that's why I think the Bills should be at least a touchdown favorite going into this game in Buffalo.
I have a couple things to say. Number one, the home field advantage, unless you're playing at the frozen tundra, it doesn't really matter right now. Stadiums aren't at full capacity. Some stadiums don't have anyone. It's really not going to make that big of a difference. So I don't think you should be.
Frozen tundra, you're playing in Buffalo outside.
I don't think you should be. Yeah, but they're playing
New York.
They're playing the Baltimore Ravens. Do you think the Baltimore Ravens are used to that? Right, exactly. So I don't think just because you're at home, you should be given points. Second, you mentioned how Josh Allen was the leading rusher for the Bills. Josh Allen is not Lamar Jackson. He should not be your leading rusher. He should not be your leading rusher. And then you mentioned how Lamar Jackson is the leading rusher for the Ravens. Yeah, he's the first player in NFL history to have back-to-back seasons with over 1,000 passing yards and over 1,000 rushing yards. That is who he is. That's what he does. So you can't really count that as a knock. And, teams are going to obviously –
I'm not counting that as a knock. I'm not counting that as a knock. I'm simply saying that the whole issue with the Ravens this season was when they went away from Lamar Jackson doing that recipe of almost run first and then the pass and build everything off of his dynamic running ability. The fact, and what I'm saying is that the Bills can force them to try and do that again, have the Ravens fall back because, the Bills are scoring a lot on offense and you have to try and play catch up, and Lamar becomes more of a pass first quarterback. That is when there is an issue because they don't have the weapon. It goes back to they don't have the weapons around him to actually be that kind of dynamic offense. Marquise Brown is not a number one wide receiver. And one thing to your point about the weather is I've talked with Packer players, and they have said that when you go into Chicago, they play in Green Bay. You go into Chicago, that's a different kind of cold right on the lake. Just because they play in Baltimore doesn't mean that the Buffalo cold isn't still going to affect them because it's a different kind of cold, So that's to that weather point.
You're basing your argument right now around they should get points and be favored because it's cold out. That's when you know they shouldn't be getting points.
Last thing before we move on.
I'm just pointing out that the weather can be a factor.
Last cherry on top before we move on. No coach in NFL history has more career playoff road wins than John Harbaugh. He has 8 of them things. Carry on.
All right. From one AFC team, we move to the best AFC team. Kansas City Chiefs are going to be playing the Browns in Kansas City at Arrowhead. And, basically, after the Browns had a surprisingly dominant win against divisional rivals, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the question has to be asked, have the Browns shown enough for Kansas City to really be worried about Cleveland? Do you guys think Cleveland poses a threat for Kansas City, and should Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid be worried?
I got to sit up for this one. Absolutely not. This Kansas City team is one of the teams we've been talking about on this show all year long, trying to identify someone who can challenge them for the AFC because they are that good. They're a near shoo-in for the Super Bowl. We've never discussed, will a Chiefs game be close, or can the Chiefs win the AFC? They are far and wide the favorite, and it'll stay that way versus Cleveland. Credit to the Browns. Credit to Baker Mayfield this past week for coming out and playing an incredible game. They jumped on him early, and there was no looking back. But they were motivated. They lost Joel Bitonio. They lost their coaches. They wanted to earn them another playoff game. They were angry that, Juju called them the ideal matchup. They came out and gave them what they deserved. But, of course, the Steelers were reeling. They entered the playoffs going in the wrong direction, and their nosedive of a season has finally come to an end. The Browns challenging the Chiefs is not really a conversation. The Browns gave up over 500 yards in a playoff win. I can't imagine a playoff loss, and against the Chiefs offense, it could get ugly. Congratulations to the Browns for getting this opportunity to play the Chiefs. But like Chase Claypool said live on TikTok, they are going to get clapped. Give me the Chiefs 34-17.
That was good stuff. That was good stuff, my guy. And I want to open and spend most of my time on this take bragging and telling Lucas Semb I told you so. We had to listen to this man tell us that the Browns weren't legit because of their franchise's history, as if that had anything to do with the 2020 season and beyond. Baker Mayfield silenced critics once again and showed that he's arrived as a top 10 quarterback in this league. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt make up one of the most lethal 1-2 punches at the running back position perhaps I've ever seen in my entire life, and this defense is talented even when not fully healthy. The best part of the Browns' win this weekend was that they looked dominant without their starting guard in Joe Bitonio, their best corner in Denzel Ward, their second best pass rusher in Olivier Vernon, and their head coach. Shout out to Mike Prefer, who acted as the Browns head coach on Sunday night in place of Kevin Stefanski. I had the opportunity to meet and talk to Coach Prefer a few years back when he was the special teams coordinator for the Vikings. And I'm super happy for him and his family, knowing that they grew up as lifelong Browns fans. It was a great weekend for Browns franchise, its fans, and those who said all along that Cleveland not only had a chance of making the playoffs, but winning a playoff game like myself. But unfortunately, as Luke alluded to, the Browns now have to travel to Arrowhead, where their playoff run will likely end. Cleveland's style of play now and ability to run the ball does favor a matchup with the Chiefs, allowing Mahomes to stay off the field and controlling time of possession. But there's just too much firepower and experience in Kansas City. Mahomes, Kelsey, and Tyreek Hill are going to be three much for anybody. And Andy Reid will have the coaching edge, as great as Kevin Stefanski is. I picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl preseason, and I don't anticipate a letdown here this weekend. But I'll tell you this. If the Browns drew either of the other AFC remaining teams, the Bills or Ravens, I'd be picking the Browns this weekend. Go ahead, Matt. What do you think about all that?
Well, for argument's sake, I agree with all of you guys. I think Kansas City overall, 9 times out of 10, is going to beat the Browns.
But of course, this weekend's going to be that 1 time out of 10, right?
Just for argument's sake, I'm going to point out that, the way that the Browns won against Pittsburgh leads me to believe that if they can recreate that same kind of recipe, there is a chance that they win. Here's why. 1, they were able to pressure the quarterback. Obviously, Pat Mahomes is way more mobile than Ben Roethlisberger. But they were still able to pressure the quarterback. And I remember against New Orleans when Kansas City was going in there, when Pat Mahomes had pressure on him, it did cause a little bit of issues. Obviously, afterwards, Mahomes is still super dynamic. He can get out of the pressure. He still creates. But they were able to get pressure on him. It affected Mahomes. So, 1, if Cleveland could do that with Myles Garrett, who is elite, and hopefully Olivier Vernon will be back as well, that creates some interesting, situations. Also, Mahomes is a gunslinger. He is willing to force the issue, and he will make a throw that most quarterbacks would probably just throw it out of bounds for. So he will throw it. And I'm not saying he's going to cause turnovers or anything like that, but Cleveland showed last week they can create turnovers. And that was really the big difference in that game, because to your point, Luke, the Pittsburgh Steelers still had amazing amount of yards on offense, and they still were able to score. It was those big turnovers, 2 interceptions created because of pressure on Roethlisberger that created a situation for the Browns to win. So I think those are 2 things on defense that lead me to believe that the Browns, if they could do that again, hit Kansas City hard right away, create pressure on Mahomes, cause turnovers, that helps them on defense. And then on offense, Scott, you alluded to it, that run game between Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt is everything. That is their bread and butter. That is how Cleveland wins games. That is what they do. And when they are effective, and you look at their great games, is because they establish the run first. And if you can do that, keep Pat Mahomes off the field and limit the amount of times he can go down and score 7, and that defense can maybe hold him to 3 once in a while, that's going to be the difference. And as you said, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, those guys, obviously, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Pat Mahomes, all of them, dynamic offense, awesome weapons. But if you look at Cleveland's options, I mean, it's not that far behind overall. It's insane what they have. The ability for them to go from Jarvis Landry to Nick Chubb to Kareem Hunt to Austin Hooper to, Rashard Higgins, David Njoku, who doesn't get used all that much, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Overall, they have a plethora of weapons as well that they can go to. And I'm not saying by any means that Cleveland should be favorited or even have, any reasonable chance of winning. But I think in a playoff game, when all the cards are on the table, you have your head coach back, you have your best players back. After what I saw Cleveland do against Pittsburgh last week, I think that they can create in a situation where they have a chance to beat the Chiefs. Whether it's a big chance or not, that's obviously something else to argue, but they have the right kind of, recipe to beat them.
My only thing about that is that you're kind of comparing apples to oranges. In one way, you're trying to compare the Steelers to the Chiefs. Not directly, it was kind of indirectly. You mentioned how the Browns were able to beat up on the Steelers. And then you see how that's a recipe to do that to the Chiefs. The Chiefs haven't faltered all year long. They do not make those mistakes. I think I don't have the exact numbers. Did the Steelers lose 5 of their last 6 games this season? Or did they go out 5 straight? I mean, they were just going.
I believe they lost 4 or 5 to finish the season.
They were just going in completely different directions, and that's just, they're going to have to do what they did to the Steelers and then some to even have a chance to make this a 2-touchdown game.
I have no doubt. I'm just saying the way that they beat the Steelers, if you were trying to create a perfect game plan to go up against Kansas City, that is the stuff that you try to do.
Our producer just said the Browns have a snowball's chance in hell of beating the Chiefs, and as much as I love Baker Mayfield and the Browns, I have to agree. As you mentioned, Matt, when the going gets tough late in the game, it's a playoff atmosphere. Give me Patrick Mahomes over everybody.
Absolutely. Well, from 2 young quarterbacks just starting their careers, we go to the old guys, and the final matchup we're going to be talking about this week, Tampa Bay goes into New Orleans. Tom Brady versus Drew Brees. And really, it's going to be a question of, has Tampa Bay figured out how to beat New Orleans? Because they haven't yet. New Orleans is 2-0 in their divisional matchups against Tampa Bay. This is, I guess the 3rd chance that they get. Do you guys think that Tampa Bay is going to be able to figure out, the solution to beating New Orleans at home?
Here's what I'll say. I respect the hell out of both of these QBs, both legendary. Winning QBs, it's hard to find a slight for either of them, but I'm going to have to go with the Tom Brady-led Buccaneers. He's a 6-time Super Bowl champion. In my opinion, Brees takes more downfield chances, but at the same token, he also makes.
You said Brees takes more downfield chances?
Can I finish? Yeah, he's not afraid to air that. Can I finish?
I guess, but that's incorrect. Based off this season, that's wrong. Bruce Arians leads a downfield shot offense. Tom Brady is top of the heads in completion yards in the air. They lead a big strike offense. Drew Brees is notoriously known for dinking and dunking to Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. But continue. I just had to stop and intervene.
Takes more chances, like, the throw's not available, but he's going to make the throw anyways. So let me finish.
Okay.
Brady. So Brees takes more downfield chances, and he's going to make more mistakes because of that. Brady's known for that his whole time in New England. It was all just check down passes.
But that's not Tampa Bay's system.
He's done the same thing in Tampa Bay, though. He does also make more downfield throws. Now he's got Antonio Brown for the long threat. He's got Mike Evans to just throw it up to and let him come down with it. So he does have more weapons. We've seen him throw the ball downfield more than we have in New England, but he still is notorious for those check down passes. That's Tom Brady's identity. That's what he does. But he also lets his position players go to work. And when he airs it out, though, that's my point. That's my difference between the two. When he airs it out, he usually finds his guy. When Brees airs it out, we've seen him degress this year pretty heavily. But I think the question is deeper than who you trust at QB. Brady will play a better game than Brees, in my opinion. But the rest of the Saints are going to bail out Brees. They have a better defense. Their threats like Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara are finally healthy and at full strength. I think the Saints are going to win this game. So I think Brady is going to play a better game, but I think the Saints are actually going to win the game because of their weapons. It's going to be close. I got the Saints 27, Buccaneers 24.
Okay, we have a more similar thought process than I thought. I want to be clear out the gate. I trust Tom Brady infinitely more than Drew Brees.
And that's where I started it off. I said I'm going to take the Tom Brady-led Buccaneers. The way I phrased that sounded like I was taking them for the win.
It sure did.
It was a 180 for me. That was a fun ride you took us on. I appreciate it.
For sure. But no, I think, as you explained, I think we think similarly about this. Like I said, I trust Tom Brady infinitely more than Drew Brees when it comes to this weekend, but I just trust the Saints more than the Bucs this weekend. And I think back to how I felt about Tampa Bay all season. I've highlighted on this show multiple times now their struggles against teams who can get after the quarterback. And Washington last week just gave them all they could handle with the backup making his second career start. New Orleans is obviously one of those teams in terms of rushing the passer, ranking 8th in sacks, 2nd in completion percentage against, and 5th in passing yards allowed. Tampa Bay caught fire to end the regular season, winning 4 straight games against the Lions, Vikings, and the Falcons twice, and everyone just forgot how they looked this season against actual good teams. The Bucs are 1-5 this season versus playoff teams, with 2 of those losses obviously coming in blowout fashion to these very Saints. I understand it's super unlikely given history that a team gets the best of Tom Brady 3 times in a season, but it's also basically been impossible up to this point. Only way you lose to a team 3 times in a season is if a division foe also makes the playoffs. And we know damn well the last 2 decades or so, the Bills, Dolphins, or Jets weren't doing that. So I think Tom will have this – actually, more importantly than all of that, I think Tom will have a moment this weekend where he's looking around his sideline at a bunch of people who have never been in a major playoff game. Not Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Ronald Jones, not his rookie left tackle. Obviously, thankfully, he'll have Gronk, but there's even more younger guys on that defensive side. That might be something even the greatest quarterback of all time just can't overcome. The Saints, meanwhile, have a ton of veteran presence and experience in big playoff moments, even if they've ended sourly. New Orleans is healthy at the right time. Michael Thomas and Kamara are both back in action in the lineup, and that's scary for any defense. And they have the confidence, like I said, of beating this team twice already this season. I like the Saints to prevail in a shootout with a lot of points scored.
Yeah. I mean, we've been agreeing a lot, and I think it's simply because these matchups, they're interesting. They're going to be exciting. I can't wait to watch Tampa Bay and Tom Brady go into New Orleans against Drew Brees, but I still have New Orleans in the end too. And Scott, I mean, I'm going to go off of what you just said. More than just being young like that, these guys all season, when it's been important moments in games, they make mistakes. I can remember the Bears game when Tampa Bay played Chicago. The Bears didn't win that game. Tampa Bay lost that game.
Absolutely.
Off of terrible mistakes and penalties. And I don't know if it's just New Orleans as a whole is that good at creating situations where opposing teams are going to make boneheaded mistakes and draw penalties. But they did against the Bears too. And that is a seasoned veteran defense that, the Bears have been in big moments, and they were causing, neutral zone infractions and offsides and just making the Bears hurt themselves more than the New Orleans Saints were hurting the Bears. So I think that overall this Saints team, as you guys have said, is just the better team. Sean Payton is a genius as far as offensive, coaching and just coaching in general. I think they have Tampa Bay's number, and I think that mentality also affects those guys going in. Tom obviously is going to be upset and he's going to want to win, but I think when a team has been that dominant against you 2 times already this season, and then you have to go in once again, play them for a game that matters the most, it's going to be hard. And I don't know if Tampa Bay is going to be able to overcome that. But, I mean, I'm also excited to see Antonio Brown, and I think that'll be the X factor, is if Antonio Brown turns back into Antonio Brown, which it looks like he's doing, that creates a situation where it really is a barn burner, and it'll have to be up to New Orleans to match them, score for score.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think there's, like I said to you before the show here, Matt, if there's any game this weekend that's truly a pick 'em, I believe it's this one here, mainly due to the future Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And again, back to my point, I just look at Tampa Bay. Their only win over a real quality opponent this season was Green Bay early in the season. And I think we all agree that was an aberration. Tampa Bay obviously whooped Green Bay, but Green Bay didn't look like themselves that game. And I think that had more to do with them than Tampa Bay. So, like I said, the Saints have been in these situations before. They have the confidence of beating Tampa Bay this season. And I think, like I said, experience prevails here. And that sounds a little silly to say when we're betting against Tom Brady, but the Saints just have too much of it. And I like them this weekend.
Absolutely. Well, end of the game, what do you think the score is going to be, guys?
I like 44-38 Saints.
It's not going to be like that. I said mine at the end of my take. I'm going to go 27 for the Saints and 24 for the Bucs.
I'll go 35-28 for the Saints. But that's been
right. Sounds about right, my guy. Take us home.
I think so. All right. Well, this has been another episode of Chalk Talk. I'm Matt Morris, along with Scott Procter and Lucas Semb. Can't wait to see who was right and who was wrong, and enjoy the NFL games this weekend.